Que pasa to the pack? It is Pack here. In today's video, I want to talk about all-time college teams. March Madness is going on right now, and there's a roster in NBA 2K23 for the PlayStation 5 that allows you to do every single major college, 62 different colleges, and their all-time teams of NBA players. I'm going to check that out in today's video. If you like that kind of content, please join the pack and subscribe, and let's get it, man. So, if you want to check out the roster, it is the all-time college roster by Unlimited Awooga. It has 1,300 downloads. Let's check it out. Let's start off with the first college. That's Kansas, with Wilt Chamberlain, Joel Embiid, JoJo White, Paul Pierce, Danny Manning. And you can keep going back to Andrew Wiggins, Bill Bridges, Kirk Heinrich, an absolute stacked roster that would win an NBA championship if it was together today. We have Illinois with Derek Harper, Darren Williams, Don Ole, Red Kerr, and even Nick Anderson, all on this team. Very, very stacked as well. We go to Louisville with Wes Unseld, Donovan Mitchell, Junior Bridgman, and then a couple of classic NBA players as well. Very, very stacked roster. Very good. Florida State with Dave Cowens, Sam Cassell, and Scotty Barnes. This one's really cool to me because you have someone that was really talented in the 70s, the 90s, and then today. Three different generations of basketball all right here at the same time. It's kind of cool to see in one team. So Florida State's pretty cool. Michigan State's obviously a banger with Magic Johnson, Kevin Willis, Draymond Green, Zach Randolph, and Jaren Jackson Jr. This is a very good defensive team for sure. We have Gonzaga with John Stockton, Domantas Sabonis, Rui Hachimura, Brandon Clark, and Kelly Olynyk. Definitely top heavy, but a very good roster for sure. Up next, we have Villanova. It has Paul Arizin, Kyle Lowry, Jalen Brunson, Bridges, Doug West. Another team that has a lot of current talent and then a lot of classic talent at the same time is always cool to see. USC, this was really cool to see that Bill Sharman, DeMar DeRozan, Gus Williams, Paul Westphal, and Vooch all on the team at the same time. Evan Mobley. I mean, this team actually has a lot of talent. It goes pretty deep. The Miami Heat are Maryland. There's Steve Francis, Buck Williams, Brad Davies. You have even Kevin Huerter. So a lot of 2000s and earlier players, but you also have even today Kevin Huerter is pretty cool. Up next, we have Houston with Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Elvin Hayes, Otis Birdsong, and then Don Chaney. It's very top heavy, but damn, the good players on this team are really damn good. It's insane. You have Georgetown with Allen Iverson, Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, Dikembe Mutombo, Sleepy Floyd, an absolute stacked roster. And that keeps going with Roy Hibbert. You have Reggie Williams, Greg Monroe, and even a couple more NBA players. It's pretty good. Washington with Isaiah Thomas, Deltless Streff. You have DeJounte Murray, Brandon Roy, James Edwards, another absolutely stacked roster. Up next, we have Florida with Bradley Beal, Jakeem Noah. Jakeem Noah got a Florida tan for sure. Al Horford, David Lee, and Udonis Haslem all on this team at the same time. A couple more players like White Chocolate as well, Vernon Maxwell. You have LSU. This one's really cool with Shaq and Bob Pettit, two absolute all-time centers. Well, I guess Bob Pettit was power forward, but you also have Pete Maravich, who's the GOAT college player. This team is stupid stacked. And then you also have Abdul Rauf and Ben Simmons, LOL. But in college, Ben Simmons was very good. And then even current players like Naj Reid, Cam Thomas, very cool. The Orlando Magic is Auburn, when you have Shaq, Chuck Persons, and Mike Mitchell. Very top-heavy for sure, but they have some players. Baylor has David Wesley, Michael Williams, Vinny Johnson. Not a very stacked team whatsoever. We have Arkansas with Sidney Moncrief, Joe Johnson, Alvin Robinson, Bobby Portis. Look at those glasses by Bobby Portis. He's got the shades. And then Patrick Beverly. This is a very good defensive team for sure, with also an isolation scorer. This team would be pretty fun to use. We have Syracuse up next with Carmelo Anthony, Dave Bing. You have Derek Coleman. You have Ron Seekley, Jeremy Grant. You have Billy Owens, Eden Thomas. A very good team carried by Carmelo, but still good. Michigan, the Fab Five. You have Chris Webber, Glenn Rice is on this team, Rudy Tomjanovich, Campy Russell. You have Ricky Green, Jordan Poole's on this team, and obviously Jalen Rose. Very, very deep roster. We have Georgia Tech with Mark Price, Chris Bosh was on Georgia Tech. You have Kenny Anderson, Stephon Marbury, Dennis Scott. Very random group of players that were all going to Georgia Tech, which is pretty cool. We have Arizona with Gilbert Arenas, Andre Iguodala, Mike Bibby, Sean Elliott, Richard Jefferson. I think the coolest thing about this is what you've noticed so far is that every single main school does have a lot of former NBA players that were all really good. Almost every single big college has one. It's actually so cool to see. Next we have Stanford. Now Stanford has Brook Lopez, Robin Lopez, obviously, with also Adam Keefe. You have Dwight Powell, a couple players here. We got Bama with Antonio McDyess, Latrell Sprewell, Gerald Wallace. You have Colin Sexton and Derek McKay. Texas, this is a pretty cool team with Kevin Durant, LaMarcus Aldridge, Jared Allen. You have Miles Turner, Johnny Moore, Avery Bradley. Very good players from UT. Tennessee has Bernard King. You have Allen Houston, Dale Ellis, and Tobias Harris, all from there. Virginia with Ralph Sampson, Malcolm Brogdon, DeAndre Hunter, Trey Murphy, Brian. You know, I would really be curious to see who would win in like an all-time like college season. That'd be pretty cool to check out. Oregon, this is really popular where I live right now. You have Terrell Brandon, Dylan Brooks, Bull, the GOAT, Greg Ballard. Ohio State with John Havlicek, Jerry Lucas, Mike Conley, Jim Jackson, Michael Redd. Now, I'm going to say right now, Ohio State has some talent all time for sure. And you keep going back to Herb Williams, Greg Oden, D'Angelo Russell, Clark Kellogg. Absolutely deep roster. Indiana had Isaiah Thomas, Victor Oladipo, George McGinnis, Dick Van Arsdale, Tom Van Arsdale, OG Anunoby, Walt Bellamy. Very, very deep. Connecticut was good. Ray Allen, Rip Hamilton. You have Kemba Walker, Karan Butler, Andre Drummond, Rudy Gay, Emeka Okafor. Stacked team. As you can imagine, UCLA is probably one of the biggest ones with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton. You have Russell Westbrook. You have Reggie Miller, Baron Davis, Kevin Love. You have Kiki Vandeweghe. You have Gil Goodrich, Mark Eaton, Sidney Wicks. It just goes on and on. Drew Holiday, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball. It goes on and on and on. Kentucky, another one. Anthony Davis, SGA, Dan Eisel, Cliff Hagan, Devin Booker, DeMarcus Cousins. You have Rajon Rondo, John Wall, Cat, Louis Dampier. Stacked for Kentucky. For Duke, another banger, obviously. You have Jason Tatum, Kyrie Irving, who played like a couple games. But you have Grant Hill, Zion Williamson, Elton Brand. You have Carlos Boozer, Brandon Ingram. Another absolutely stacked roster. North Carolina, bro, like Michael Jordan, Vince Carter, James Worthy. You have Bob McAdoo, Billy Cunningham, Brad Daughtry, Bobby Jones, Walter Davis, Rasheed Wallace. It just goes on and on. Another dummy stack team. Oklahoma State with John Starks. You have Tony Allen, Cade Cunningham, Bryant Reeves, and Marcus Smart. North Carolina State with David Thompson, Thurl Bailey. You have Kenny Carr, Nate McMillan, TJ Warren, all from there. I didn't know DePaul was this big, but like George Mikan, Mark Aguirre, Terry Cummings, Rod Strickland, Quentin Richardson. A lot of players back in, I guess, like the 80s, 70s, 60s, and even 50s. But when in terms of like newer players, I guess like Paul Reed's like a newer player, but like no one else is from DePaul. Minnesota has Kevin McHale, Lou Hudson, Archie Clark. You have Michael Thompson, Bobby Jackson, all great players. Let's go with Purdue with Brad Miller, okay, Glenn Robinson, Joe Barry Carroll, underrated player for sure. With Marquette, you have Dwayne Wade, Jimmy Butler. I mean, what a cool team to have these two guys together. Maurice Lucas, Doc Rivers, Jay Crowder, Jim Chones, and you have Wes Matthews. Pretty good team. Arizona State, you got James Harden, Fat Lever, Freddie Lewis, Byron Scott, all very good players. Wisconsin isn't that good, but it has some players like Michael Finley, Devin Harris, and Frank Kaminsky. Up next, we have Cal. It's Jason Kidd, Marquez Johnson. You have Jaylen Brown, Kevin Johnson, Phil Chenier, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, another absolutely dummy stack team. Notre Dame has Adrian Dantley, Orlando Woolridge, Bill Laimbeer, Kevin Trupica, and Austin Carr. Cincinnati with Oscar Robertson from there, and then Jack Twyman as well. I mean, those are two major players back then, with Kenyon Martin as well, Nick Van Axel, and even Lance Stevenson, which is like a more modern player. Very cool team. Utah has Tom Chambers, Keith Van Horn, Kyle Kuzma, Andre Miller, Jakob Poeltl. UNLV, you have Sean Marion, Larry Johnson, Reggie Theus. You have Isaiah Ryder, very good team. Xavier, David West, Brian Grant, and Tyrone Hill. Not a very big team, but it has some players. Wake Forest, bro, with Tim Duncan, Chris Paul, Muggsy Bogues, John Collins, and Al-Farouq Amino, all from this team. Is actually a really underrated team. You have Memphis with Derrick Rose, Penny Hardaway, Larry Kennan, Tyreek Evans, bro, and even Jalen Duren today. Oklahoma has Blake Griffin with Trae Young, Alvin Adams. You have Buddy Hield, Austin Reeves today, another cool team. Iowa with Connie Hawkins. You have Fred Brown, BJ Armstrong, John Johnson, and Keegan Murray. St. John's is another big one because you have Chris Mullin, Ron Artest, Mark Jackson, Steve Kerr, and Greg Anthony. Another one that has kind of like all over the place. Colorado has some NBA players like Chauncey Billups, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Derek White on the team. Iowa State with Tyrese Halliburton, who's way higher than an 89 overall now. You have Jeff Hornacek, Monte Morris, THT. Fresno State basically has Paul George and like no one else. We have Georgia. Georgia has Dominique Wilkins, Anthony Edwards. You have Vern Fleming, Nicholas Claxton, and Willie Anderson. Kansas State with Mitch Richmond, Rolando Blackman, and Bob Boozer. I'm still surprised they have Michael Beasley even in the game. Providence has Lenny Wilkins, Ortis Thorpe. You have Jimmy Walker. Temple has Eddie Jones, Aaron McKee, Tim Perry. And again, like we're starting to get like to the smaller schools, not smaller schools, but less talented schools like Long Beach State that only had Bob Gross and Craig Hodges. That's like really it. And then finally Tulsa that had Paul Pressey and Bingo Smith. So a couple of schools that, I mean, I think at the end, like who cared? I was really surprised they didn't have like Texas A&M, for example, but still, it's a really, really cool roster. So, I mean, if you're, you know, it's not gonna have like a smaller school like I'm from UTSA, so I don't like they're not gonna have like what Devin Brown. They're not gonna make a whole team for him, right? But like most of these teams have at least most NBA players. That's a really cool thing. You guys should check it out. Let me know in the comments below if you like it, and if you like the channel, please give it a sub. I'll see you guys next time.